Today I'm going to show you how I went from a blank canvas to this finished illustration and give you some tips for drawing your own character illustrations. So let's get started. I start every illustration by drawing thumbnail sketches. And thumbnail sketches are small sketches you create to get quick ideas for an image. At this point, I'm not focusing on any details. Instead, I want to focus on the story and the composition. I want my character, Inuki, to discover a home in a mysterious forest. And so that's my story for this image. It's also important to have reference, and that's what I'm using here to help me draw new ideas faster. I just use the program called Pure Reference to quickly gather images from the internet that will help me draw and convey my idea. So now that I have a thumbnail that I like, I sketch over the thumbnail to create more clarity in the image. And at this point, I want everything to be as clear as possible. I make sure there's a foreground, a middle ground, and a background in the illustration. And I draw Inuki's clothing as well. This stage is all about refining the sketch and making sure everything is clear and you have as much clarity as possible so that you can go in and ink the drawing when you're ready. And so here is the finished, refined sketch. And like I said, I just want to make sure this sketch is as clear as possible. I have as much information as I need to go in and ink over this. After I refine the sketch, I'm ready to actually ink the lines. When I ink the natural elements like the trees, grass, and mushrooms, I want my lines to be as loose as possible to create a natural feeling. But when I'm inking the building in the middle ground, I want to make sure the lines are precise and stable. And for my character, Inuki, it's a mix of being loose and stable with my line art. So in Clip Studio, I just use the regular G Pen tool with some customized settings for myself. And that's just a tool I'm most comfortable using. So that's what I am using to ink the drawing. But of course, you can use any of the brushes as you see fit. So after I finish inking a certain element in the piece, like my character and the foreground, I actually go ahead and create a color mask so that I can separate each element from each other, and it helps me see my progress in the piece. Doing this also will help me in the coloring stage when I am able to just lock the layer and just color on top of it. So when I actually drew the building, I used a perspective ruler so that my lines are steady, they're precise, and they look structurally sound. So here's the finished line work for this piece. The last and most important part of my illustration is the color. Because the scene takes place in a forest, I wanted green to be the primary color and red the secondary color. I used green for all the foliage and red for the giant mushrooms. My goal with the colors was to make the scene feel inviting but still mysterious. I specifically wanted to highlight my character using warm lights to emphasize that she is a focal point of the illustration. And so that's why you see me create beams of light that point towards the character. As we move back in space, the details are less important, and I use basic shapes and lighter colors to create a sense of atmosphere in the background. And I use the large shapes of the trees in the background to create an even greater sense of mystery. Like I said, I want this to take place in more of a fantasy setting, so I have these smaller trees, normal sized trees, but then I have these gargantuan trees in the background. And that's part of the storytelling as well. For the rays of light shining on my character Inuki and in the scene, I use the add glow layer with an orange tint to it, and I think that really helps the image pop out with these rays of light. So after I finished coloring, I added a red slash kind of like purple overlay at about 40% opacity to create more cool shadows throughout the piece. And overlay as a layer setting automatically adds a little bit of saturation and a little bit of contrast to the image. So it's always cool to experiment with that and see how what colors on an overlay layer affect and how it affects the entire image. The only other layer mode I used was multiply, and that was for the shadows in the foreground to make the foreground stand out a little bit more from the middle ground and the foreground, or in the background, I mean. But of course, the most important part of any illustration process is just having fun and creating something that you really enjoy. Because I've done this a couple of times, and if you don't enjoy the process, if you're not into it, and if you're not just enjoying it then and not having fun in it, and it's hard to continue to make improvements in the drawing and continue to draw the drawing when you're not even finding it fun to draw, you know what I mean? So it's important to have fun and at the same time experiment and learn and grow as you draw the illustration. Overall, I'm happy with how the illustration turned out, and I'm excited to continue to create more illustrations and more drawings for the characters that live in this world. But hopefully this helped you out, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.